Housing and Community Safety Scrutiny Committee on the 19th of September 2024. I am Councillor Charlotte Goldsworthy and I will be chairing this meeting. Before we move on to the next agenda item, please note that this meeting will be recorded. Please can you ensure that all your mobile phones are switched to silent? That's what I'm actually doing right now, actually. And can members and officers who are present in the chamber please use their microphones when speaking? When asked to raise your hand, can members who are virtually viewing this meeting raise your electronic hand? Members who are in the chamber, please raise your physical hand. Please can members attending this meeting virtually also ensure that their cameras are actually switched on for the duration of the meeting. Now I will move on to agenda item 2. Declarations of interest. If there is any members that have any declarations of interest to make, can you please indicate now? Thank you. Agenda item 3, you will see the minutes attached at pages 5 to 8 of your agenda pack. If you feel these minutes are an accurate record of the meeting, I will propose, can I have a seconder, please?
A second.
If members do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it that these minutes are approved.
Chair, I can confirm these minutes are approved.
Agenda item 4, to consider items from the Cabinet Forward Work Programme. We will now move to consider the reports as selected by this committee for consideration. Agenda item 4A, this report is for decision, which is the Disability Facilities Grants options for appraisal. So I just want to say it's a really good report. It's an interesting report and very detailed, which that's really good. Obviously, from my own personal experience of seeing how important this grant is in the community, it's a vital lifeline for many people. So again, it is, and I know obviously when you look at the budget being like 3 million, it sounds a lot, but me personally think it's not enough. So again, I think down the road we will be looking into that a bit further to try to get some extra money for that, because as a council we're looking at keeping people more independent in their homes and everything else. So again, I think this is a really valid agenda item too. So again, if I come over to you, Andrew, if is there anything else you'd like to add to the report?
Chair, with your permission, can we just take you through it in a bit of detail? Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Because I think the reason we brought this report through to Cabinet is we want to make sure that disabled facilities grants are available for those who most need it. And so we've had to look at, well, actually, how do we provide those services? So I don't know whether Shelley wanted to say anything before I hand over to Rob.
Thank
but
you.
I'm not going to present this, Chair. It will be Rob Davis.
Yeah, so I'll just talk you through the report and then Rob and myself can answer any questions that you might have around the report. So back in March this year, I came to the Social Services Community Safety Cabinet Board to highlight the increased pressures and demands that we're seeing on the Disabled Facilities Grants, which we know as DFGs. So just to remind us all, DFGs are a grant of up to £36,000 to help people with a disability make the changes they're assessed as needing to remain safely living in their own homes and to give them as much independence as possible within their home. Post-COVID, though, we have seen that waiting times for people to get the works they need has really increased quite significantly. And alongside people having to wait longer and longer for these works to be done, we're also experiencing a number of people that can't actually get all the works that they've been assessed by an OT as needing, because the £36,000 limit on a DFG is now actually not sufficient to be able to afford some larger pieces of work like extensions and things like that. So in the previous report that I brought to you earlier this year, we provided a brief overview of some of the options that Rob and his team were working through in order to try and minimise the impact of these challenges and pressures on the DFG budget so that we could make it as available as possible to all those people that desperately need something like this to remain safe and independent in their home. So the report that is brought to you today is the conclusion of that work that Rob and his team's done. And there's two recommendations in this report. So the first recommendation, the aim of this recommendation is to try and mitigate the rising demand for DFGs, which is leading to people having to wait much longer to get those works. As the report explains, a couple of years ago, Welsh Government asked all local authorities in Wales to consider removing the means test for small and medium works. And Welsh Government then provided Neath Talbot Council with an extra £90,000 grant to something, it's called the Enable Grant, which is one of the grants we use. And that was to help mitigate the impact of having more people apply for a DFG. But unfortunately, the additional Welsh Government funding that they gave us is actually a significant underestimate of the increased demand that the decision to remove the means test actually brought. So as we mentioned in the report, the means test, the fact that we've removed that means test is likely to have cost the council around £1.23 million in the last financial year. So what's really important for us to recognise is that the council provides a defined amount of funding each year for the DFGs. So once all that available budget's been allocated to people within the financial year, we then have to start a waiting list for when new money comes available in the next financial year. And because of the increased demand and the higher cost of works, what we're finding is that the council is allocating all that DFG budget earlier and earlier on in the year, which means that people are now having to wait much longer for them to be able to obtain the DFG and get that work that they need doing. So whilst we absolutely recognise and appreciate the good reasons, the reasons why we made that decision to remove the means test a couple of years ago, the additional demand from this decision has been much higher than we anticipated it would be. So as a result of that, those people that are most in need of a grant because they don't have the financial means to be able to go out and do these pieces of work themselves or pay for the equipment themselves are now waiting much longer to be able to get those works done. So because of that, on balance, what we say in the report is that we feel that we need to maybe consider reintroducing the means test for small and medium works so that those most in need can get prompter access to the adaptations they require in their home. So that's the reason why the report requests permission from Cabinet for officers to undertake a public consultation on whether we should reinstate the means test. So once we've had chance to undertake that consultation and review the feedback and be able to more fully understand the implications, then officers can then develop a final recommendation which would be brought back to Cabinet at a later date. The second officer recommendation in this report looks to try and help mitigate the impact of those rising costs of works, which means that some people can't afford to be able to get the works they need. And then they're struggling to be able to cope without the works that an OT has assessed that they need in their house. So for that reason, officers are recommending that we set up a discretionary fund totaling £100,000 per annum, which would then allow the council to provide an additional grant of up to £10,000 per application to help contribute towards the additional costs of those larger works such as extensions. If we set this up, though, what we would do is make sure that that additional £10,000 was provided under what we call a lifetime charge to the property, so that the money would be paid back to the council at a later date once that house is disposed of. The funding for this discretionary fund would come from the amount of money we get back to the council each year from DFG recipients. So each year there's an amount of money that the council gets returned to them from people that have had a DFG, because we implement a charge over the property for that amount for a period of 10 years. Which means that, for example, if I had a DFG and then I moved house within 5 years, for example, I would have to pay that money back to the council. So we always have a pot of money there that we could then use to be able to fund a top up to the DFG £36,000. So just to conclude, what officers are asking in this paper is for Cabinet to approve officers to undertake further work in respect of a proposal to reinstate the means test for small and medium work, which would include undertaking a public consultation, and also the establishment of a discretionary budget that would provide up to an additional £10,000 for essential works that cost more than the £36,000 DFG limit. So that's my introduction to the paper. Rob, is there anything that I may have missed that you wanted to come in on?
Thanks, Shelley. If I can just add a couple of things which aren't in the paper, some things that have come to light since we've done the paper. I think one thing to note, especially on the discretionary element, bringing that budget in so we can support the works over 36. What is happening now is because we've changed this, it's driven a different behaviour. The OTs are now starting to recommend vertical lifts within properties. So those are costing just short of £20,000, but it's not producing the ideal solution. So we've got a few small houses where they're recommending installing vertical lifts just so it comes under the £36,000. So the applicant can have a solution, but it's not the ideal long-term solution. So we can see now that by the limit of 36, it's now starting to drive a different type of behaviour that isn't a good behaviour. So we'd like to bring that discretionary money in so then we can start looking at extensions, because people genuinely need extensions. So those that are absolutely in need, we can bring that £10,000 in and make an extension happen instead of having to make do vertical lift. That isn't the ideal solution. So this is something that's come to light in the last couple of weeks since we've written the paper. So I just wanted to bring that up really just to make people aware of that as well.
If I just come out there on the vertical lift, I seen one of them which was quite a fire hazard. It went from one front room up to the bedroom with a wheelchair, and I just couldn't believe that it had been done, if I was being honest, for safety reasons. And then obviously, that was sorted. One of the questions I've got to you both is one about, you said about obviously the lifetime clawback, which I totally welcome. Yeah, charge on property. But how do we do this? Obviously, if the house is obviously like a social housing one. So if you can just explain to committee a bit more about, how many do come in from social housing? How would that work there? Yeah.
Yeah, I can answer that. The short answer is we won't be offering that option to social housing because they don't sell their properties. We will never get that money back. So that's a clause which we put in the paper to say that it'll only be offered to privately owned properties, because they will be sold at some point down the line and we will get that money back. Whereas the likes of Titarian and other RSLs, they will not sell those properties. So we will not give them the option. It's up to the the RSL to fund that additional work themselves. So we've met with Titarian some time ago and made that clear to them as well.
Great.
That's the answer in short there.
Yeah, I'd like to know what happens with people who live in privately rented properties.
Yeah, that will apply to them as well. That they can have the £10,000 because it's a private landlord, so they can sell the property anytime they want. So chances are they will sell that property at some point over the next 10, 20 years, whatever. Whereas the RSLs, it's very unlikely that they will sell their properties.
So if I can come back on Ellen's question there with the private landlord, is the landlord that has to sign the agreement then, yeah? Rather than the actual, I'm assuming there'll be two signatories, the landlord as well as the tenant?
We have to have landlord permission before we can do any work on a landlorded property, yes. and they are made aware of the conditions at that point as well.
I have another question as well, because obviously there is a demand for these services as well, and there's a lot of people obviously that are in hospital. They go into hospital with an illness, and then obviously they come out. Now they're actually waiting in these hospital beds for such a long period of time because the house is going to be adapted, or all that have got to be in place first before they're released. Now, how does that actually work then? Because I'm assuming, I might be wrong, that we prioritise in the hospital to home, or is it two different factors? Does health make a contribution to that? Because obviously it's costing them daily by having an individual in bed as well. So how does that bit of it work as well?
Yeah, we used to have a hospital discharge grant, which we had some additional funding from Western Bay, but that dried up some time ago. So in those situations, yes, we used to give them that discretionary grant to get them out of hospital. Now we don't have that anymore. So now it's down to the occupational therapist to go out and prioritise things. So if they come to us with an absolute priority need, then we will put it to as far as the front of the queue as we can, depending on the current state of spend. But as Shalay mentioned earlier, our spend is being spent a lot earlier. We've already started to commit next year's budget already.
So that's actually difficult then, really, because you basically prioritising. It's like I don't know how you actually. That's difficult. With obviously the people, the OTs that go into, and obviously bringing them out of hospital. So take my hat off to you for that, because I do sympathise there. But again, in your opinion, does we need to be looking at more sort of money maybe coming from health, which isn't there now? And what is the reason why the grant actually stopped from Western Bay?
Yeah, it's something we've tried before to try and get some extra funding from health, because it is associated with them and it gets people out of hospital quicker. But that's never come. The Western Bay grants changed, so they stopped approving those for us. So it's down to the prioritization system then. We've looked at this. We've looked at it. Part of the paper was bringing in some kind of priority system, but we had lengthy discussions with the OTs. The vast majority, probably 99% on our list, are all equal priority because they're all shower conversion, small works. So it then becomes almost impossible then to prioritise people unless people come in with an absolute dire need. One thing we've agreed with the OTs is some pieces of work, not the whole recommendations, are a priority need, is that we then deal with that item of work as a priority need, and the rest of the work that's not a priority need can wait then with the rest of the queue. So we're trying to bring in priorities as close to the front and doing them as quickly as we can, as best as we can, with sort of limited resources, really.
So, Angela, you want to come in?
Just briefly, so that the committee is aware, we wouldn't be leaving people.
Bear with me, Angela. It's very quiet, you are.
Any better if I shout?
No, not much, but I can hear you a bit better there. But I think all of them are quiet though, aren't they?
Right,
Just bear with me a minute. Let us see if it's anything to do with us. Can you speak now, please, Angela?
Can you hear me better?
It's a little bit. Yeah, we'll go with that. It's
Okay.
not usually as quiet as this.
Okay, I'll go back on my iPad in a minute, just to give the committee some reassurance. We wouldn't be leaving people in hospitals waiting adaptations for any lengthy times. What we would be doing is probably moving them into an extended care placement in a residential bed. That would be at a cost to the council, so we'd bear that cost, but we wouldn't be letting people drift in a hospital bed for any length of time if we can do something else.
Thanks, Angela. Helen?
Yeah, no, timescales I'm looking at now. How, if we were to implement this, how soon do you anticipate this would clear the backlog?
Clearing the backlog is an interesting question.
Talk about put him on the spot by URL.
So once we've done the consultation and we get the approval further down the line, we then need to change our policy tools. So we've got our legal document to say what our service does. With that, then needs to come back to Cabinet for approval again. So hopefully, ideally, I'd like to see this all implemented by the start of next financial year. So then, with regard to the backlog of I had a meeting with my officers this week. We got 274, I think, on the waiting list at the moment. The majority of those, when we bring in the means test, will probably drop off. So what we are proposing is that unless they've started the formal application process, which if they're sat on the waiting list, they won't have at this point, we'll be notifying them and in the consultation that we'll be reintroducing the means test. Now, previously, before, when we still had the means test, as soon as we let those people know there was a means test, a lot of them dropped out at that point. Some of them weren't prepared to give their finances, so they drop out. Some of them come through and they have massive contributions after we've done the means test, so they drop out. Normally, we perhaps get 10, 15 maximum will come through out of about 150 in that position applying. So we anticipate then quite a lot of them starting to drop off. So hopefully, I think from the consultation, people will then start to pull out. And then once we implement it and write to them formally, then I think more people will start to drop out again. So then the ones which are on the benefits and the ones that need it the most, they're going to start to come right back up to the top of the queue then. So that's going to help us massively.
I would like to see like a copy of a means test to see, because I think that as long as I'm always a favourite of having that one line in there on most of our documents that we got the discretionary powers, because again, there are lots of people that maybe just border, or it could be, that few pound or a few pound under, whatever. So again, I would like to see that in the document that we've got discretionary powers to basically make decisions, it's not rigid, like black and white means test. It's, we do work with the actual people as well.
Yeah, I think we've got to be careful there with the means test, because for large grants, they have to be means tested. That is in the policy tools. There's no discretion over that. It's just the smaller, medium grants, they've been taken out we created a new discretionary grant because it goes against the DFG policy on request of the Welsh Government. So that's why we've now, using our discretionary powers, we can use that power to not means test them. Because otherwise, if you go along the DFG, the actual DFG route, it is a requirement that the means tested.
Yeah, no, I fully welcome a means test. Yeah, I totally welcome a means test. But again, it's like with when that came up recently, is it was the actual boiler that an individual had in the house that was costing double what like someone's house is, but it was the actual boiler. So they don't have savings. They have like obviously their PIP or whatever, but it was the fact of it was the boiler was the issue, but that's like nothing to do with us. But again, it affects the means testing sometimes, I think, really. Or we can discuss that after. Yeah, we'll have a little look on that. Sharon Freegard, and then I'll bring you in, yeah.
Oh, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm in favour of the means testing. I think it's a fair system. But my questions are, one, are we clawing back the deficit from Welsh Government? What's happening around that? And clarity around the Western Bay grant. I mean, was the grant given to them by Welsh Government somehow that it should come to us? Can we have a bit more clarity around that? And do we still have the opportunity and the power to call Western Bay to committee?
Shelley, I can see your hand up there.
Yeah, I can answer some of those questions. So, no, Welsh Government provided us with an extra £90,000 to help manage the increased demand we expected and anticipated to see from removing the means test. So no, we don't get extra money from Welsh Government other than the 90,000 that we've had. With regards to some of the money from West Glamorgan, so we did have some money coming through from West Glamorgan to help us with our DFGs, and we are going to get some this year as well. but what it is it's more to do with the capital monies. There was a change about 2 years ago with the Welsh Government kind of requirements for the capital monies that West Glamorgan allocate for capital schemes, which has then impacted on how much money we can get to use towards DFGs. But we are actually, I chair the West Glamorgan Capital Group, and we are actually having conversations with Welsh Government around the ability to use more of the money that Welsh Government provide under these grants for DFGs, because we see it as something that is needed. And, you know, there's a question, it's great to have money to be able to do new things and build new properties and things like that, but it's also really important to be able to keep people where they are as well, if that's where they want to stay, if we're able to keep them in the homes by doing adaptations. So we are having those conversations with Welsh Government. The last question around bringing West Glamorgan representatives to this meeting, I don't know the answer to. Maybe Andrew or somebody else may know that. Oh, Craig's there.
If I just bring the director in.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. So it's interesting, isn't it, when we talk about West Glamorgan Regional Partnership Board and can we bring them in? Them is us. So we are a part of the board. I sit on the board. The leader chairs it from Neath Talbot. And yes, of course, we can call in information from that board. So if we want to know more about what the Regional Partnership Board is doing, then absolutely we can call that in. The funding for the region now that comes through the Regional Partnership Board has changed, as Shaleia said. But on the revenue side, it's much more about transformation and using capital to support the transformation that we have. So they're not expecting us to commit funds on a long-term basis. They're saying, we want you to use this money to try new things. And then when they're working, to actually use your own money then to start to fund that and go on to new transformation programs. Of course, everyone across Wales has struggled with some of that, but that's why the funding's not been available for DFGs. And what we've done in the past is we've used underspends that we've had in the year then to actually go to DFGs, because it makes sense for health and local authorities that people are not in hospital for longer than they need to. And from our point of view in the council, that people don't have to access residential care or domiciliary care because they don't have the changes to their home that they absolutely need. So that's from me, Chair.
Chair, can I come back on that, please?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I think it's very woolly around how much they can give us for the grants. And so for a future meeting, or if you can come back on an email, I'd like to know exactly what the figures or the percentages are that they should be giving to the council. And the other point is 90,000 compared to over £1 million deficit. It's just there's no comparison there. So surely we're not writing that off, or we're taking that from another pot. What's happening with that? Because that's over £1 million. Unless I got that wrong, Shaleia.
Right, okay. Rob Davis is going to come in now to answer that.
Yeah, if I can just clarify the 90,000, that was calculated by the Welsh Government by the amount of small and medium-sized grants where a contribution was paid. So they went to all the authorities in Wales, worked out how many of these grants had actually gone through to the point where they had the means test and they were paying a contribution. They added that up across Wales and then they kind of proportioned it off, and that's how they worked out the 90 grand. What they didn't take into account was the amount of people that had cancelled because of the means test, and the amount of people that weren't even coming into the authority because they knew there was a means test. So there was all that demand, which they didn't even take into account. They just took into account the ones that had crossed over the line, which was very, very few, and worked out the value from there.
I understand that, Rob, but to be as far out as over, I think it was £1.5 million, was it, Shaleia? From 90,000, what are we going to do about that?
Yes.
They're really not going to get away with that.
That's just what the change has brought, is the additional demand into the system, which those people have rightly done. Everybody likes something for free, and we're getting doctors, solicitors, lawyers, all sorts of stuff coming through the system, and that is a knock-on effect of removing this means test. So they are all very much in their right to do it, because that's the system we have changed. We have allowed them to come in because Welsh Government have asked us to do that, and that was the additional cost. It's not over and above the 3 million. It's all within the 3 million, but that's how much that additional demand is costing.
If I can just bring the challenge, you need to come back there. I'm just going to bring the director in a minute.
Yeah, I think perhaps he could clarify that a bit. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks, Councillor Freegard, for that question. I think so it's really important that it's not an additional million that we're funding as a council. It's
Right.
if we were to take the whole of the waiting list and fund that, then there would be an extra million. But we're not doing that because we've only got the 3 million that we're using for our DFG. So it's not an additionality that we've paid out. What it means is the fact that we've now no longer means testing means that we've got lots more demand for those services. And what we've tried to do today to give you a figure for that is we've said, look, that would, if we delivered all of that, be an extra £1 million more than Welsh Government gave us. But of course, we're not doing that. We've got such a long waiting list. We're never going to get to the end of all of that. So that's really important that we're clear about that. So it's not an additional spend from the council at this point.
Okay,
And then,
thanks for that.
is that okay, Councillor Freegard?
Yeah, but how quickly can we bring in the means test criteria?
Well, we need to go out to consultation, and then we need to change the policies, as Rob has said. So we are hoping that by the start of the new financial year, next year, so next April, that we will have this in place and we'll be able to start to roll this out. It will be fair to say that Welsh Government will not be particularly pleased with Neath Port Talbot or other local authorities who've taken this step. But we're saying to you as officers, that's our recommendation, because at the moment, the most vulnerable people are not getting the services that they need.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we're all in agreement with that, to be honest.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, Chair, can I just answer the second question, which was about West Glam funds? So absolutely, you could bring that forward on your forward work programme for us to bring you more information about Regional Partnership Board funding. It's certainly not woolly. It is, we have an amount of money that we spend as a region, and it's very clear and transparent about what we spend that on. And you will be able to see as a committee what that looks like. That wouldn't be a difficulty. And when we get into the part of the programme here for forward work programme, we can build that in.
I think for transparency, that would be good. Thanks, Andrew.
Okay, thank you. Finally, the wait is over. Councillor Joe Hill.
Sorry, it's only a quick question, Rob. You know, the vertical lifts, are they cheaper to use than, or to install, than a stair lift? And do we actually use many?
The vertical lift is a lot more expensive than the stair lift. Some stair lifts we can get for under £1,000. A vertical lift, you're probably talking £20,000, because it is like Chair said earlier, you can have a wheelchair in there, and it literally goes from your living room right up through to your bedroom. So you've got this the whole lift shaft. You've got to do structural works. It's a big job.
It's similar, but on a smaller scale to the ones in Curry's in Swansea. No, you can go in and then you press the button up and down. One of those.
It's similar to commercial ones, just on a slightly smaller scale. Yeah.
Yeah. Right, okay, that's great. Because there's been a long discussion there now. I don't know where I am. I get too engrossed. So, right, okay. The recommendation is listed on page 10 of the agenda pack. I will propose, can I have a seconder, please?
Second.
Can members please indicate if they wish to abstain?
I can see no abstentions, Chair.
Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it that this decision is supported to Cabinet.
Chair, I can see no indication to the contrary, so this recommendation is supported to Cabinet.
Agenda item 5 is to consider items from the Scrutiny Committee Forward Work Programme. There is none right now. So I'm going to go straight on to agenda item 6, which is the performance monitoring. There's no items to be considered at today's meeting. Simply there was a delay for members to know. There was a delay in the agreement of the corporate plan, and as a result of that, what we'll be having is Q1 and Q2 performance reports added to the forward work programme for the 12th of December. After this meeting then, because they're obviously putting it and generalising exactly the same documents across all committees in the new scrutiny scheme of things, what will then happen is that it will then revert back to quarterly performance reports going forward on that. So that's information for you all. Agenda item 7. Obviously the selection now is of the items for future scrutiny. To go through the Cabinet Forward Work Programme and to add any further items which members wish to consider. In briefing this week, there were 3 items which have been mentioned to go forward. One is the Child Protection Register, because we have had quite a number of questions in that. So basically what we've asked as a committee is to have a report detail of ABC, about how it works, how it operates, how children go on it, come off it, and obviously go back on it. And then we also have asked for the Youth Justice Service to have a bit more insight into how the data and the services of them. And the last one is the Western Bay Regional Partnership, which again has already been discussed numerous times this morning. So that, especially for the new members as well and old, is for us to have a better insight. We do have very detailed reports on that, but in a number of meetings I have said I'm not seeing in the communities and around what are the benefits of the Western Partnership for this council and the communities we represent. So is there anything else, Pam, that I need to add? Yeah, if Pamela can just take over a minute now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members. I just want to let members know, you will be aware you've got the Cabinet Forward Work Programme in your agenda pack. There have been some additions to that Forward Work Programme, and in consultation with the Chair, some of those have already been selected for scrutiny. So we've got 13th of November, permission to consult on the remodelling of Link, and permission to consult on the remodelling of Park House. Those 2 reports have been added to the Scrutiny Forward Work Programme for the 7th of November. There's some items added to the 4th of December Cabinet Forward Work Programme. Permission to extend contract arrangements for the Prevention of Wellbeing Service, and the half-yearly update for corporate plan, which the Chair just mentioned, which has come to scrutiny on the 12th of December. 15th of January, the permission to tender a carer service. That report has been added to the Scrutiny Forward Work Programme for the 12th of December. And then in 19th of March, we've got Healthy Relationships for Stronger Community Strategy. And 9th of April, Community Safety Strategic Intent Document. But we do have a Community Safety Update report scheduled for scrutiny on the 13th of March. So if members do want to bring forward any other items that have not already been selected for scrutiny, can they just bring that to the attention of the Chair or to me, please? Or can I just mention one more thing, Chair? We have had some feedback from members regarding the size of the Cabinet Forward Work Programme, which I can't change. But to make it easier going forward for members to identify, we have where new items are added, they will be coloured in green, so members can see at a glance which ones are new. And a column has been added to show which items have already been added for scrutiny.
It's also been asked as well, is there's a lot of titles that we're given, and they could mean absolutely anything. I think the report writer and officers will know what they are, but for ourselves, sometimes we've got to try and figure that out. So again, if there was like a brief explanation of what they are for us to know. For instance, it says about Park House there. Every single ward in the borough, I think, have got a Park House. So again, this is actually the children's respite down in the Little Warren in Talbot. I think I did visit it some years ago. It's run by Action for Children. And so again, it's it's a brilliant little resource. Obviously we'd like a few more of them, or that one bigger. So again, that is Park House in Little Warren, just to put clarity on that. Yeah, Pam can come in.
Yeah, just to mention, members, you may notice
Right, on one of them.
it's the permission to extend contract arrangements for the prevention of wellbeing service. I don't know if anybody on the call today can provide any additional information on that report, please.
Shelley, I think that's you, under
Yeah,
you,
I was
isn't
trying.
it?
I'm sorry, I was trying to find my hand. Yes, so that is a contract that we have with the Wallich to provide a range of prevention, early intervention and prevention activity to support people that are at risk of becoming homeless. So it's a report in respect to that service and that contract that will be coming to you shortly.
That's just an example of sometimes when we are reading, it's for us to actually know what it is, because again, we do also have the wellbeing and befriending service. So again, if I can just request that sometimes the titles are more ABC, what they are for us, I'd really appreciate that.
Can I just check
if
any members want to pull that? If it's an explanation, they went to selective scrutiny.
Yes, important one, isn't it? Yeah. Right, okay. So obviously, Shelley have just, and we'll take some advice off you on this one as well, Shelley, because you've just explained really what it is. So is that then a document that needs to come to us for that meeting?
It wouldn't harm, I think, if it would be good for you to see the document. My understanding is it will be a request around the contract. So yeah, I think it would be good for it to come here.
Right, okay. Yeah, we can do then. Does any members have any further questions on anything we just spoke about? Great, we'll move on then. Pretty fast now, isn't it? Agenda item 8, urgent items, I have none. Agenda item 9, which is the access to meetings. We will now need to consider the private items included on the agenda. As you can see on the agenda, the private paragraph is there for everyone to read. I will propose, can I have a seconder, please?
A second.
To move into private, thank you. Can I please ask that any public or press in attendance now exit the meeting, and can the recording be stopped?